Women Lead, a production of the Women of Color Empowerment Institute. We are your hosts. I'm Kathy Eggleston.
I am Michelle Austin Pammies.
And I am Bernadette Norris Weeks.
Our conversation today is about higher education in America, its relevance, its challenges, and the future of our community's access to higher education, which has been the gateway for Americans of all backgrounds to lead professional lives of purpose, escape generational poverty, and live out the American dream.
And we are fortunate today to have as our guest Gregory Adam Haile, someone who is recognized nationally as a visionary and I dare to say a disruptor. He is someone who formerly served as president of Broward College, and with more than 55,000 students, Broward College is not only one of the largest institutions of higher education in the region, but it has also a majority minority student population, and during his tenure was ranked number one by U.S. News and World Report for minimizing student loan debt.
Let's talk about Greg Haile, the man. He came from very humble beginnings in Jamaica, Queens, New York. And he has never forgotten how his mother's commitment to getting him a quality education completely transformed his life. Driven by that life experience, he ultimately earned his Juris Doctorate degree from Columbia, where he served as editor-in-chief of the National Black Law Journal.
Ladies, I'll tell you, there's so much to talk about when it comes to higher education. And now that the U.S. Supreme Court has stricken from consideration any deference that colleges can pay to race, their strategies for trying to achieve what they believe is important in trying to get a diverse student population has been hampered.
Yes, and our communities have always had issues with access to higher education and, frankly, curriculum that only minimally included our history and our stories, and that's under attack as well. We have a lot of challenges to talk about.
That's true.
Yes, we do. And I have to say that with respect to that cultural diversity, racial diversity, it's not just an issue of having the people of different colors and ethnicities in a classroom. It's an education that everyone benefits from, because there's so much division in this country. Imagine if you have a classroom where there is no diversity. You don't get a chance to learn about the other cultures, the other people, and therefore it's harder for you to get along with them. If you want to be with everyone in the world, you need to be with them at some point in your education so that you have access to them, learn from them, and it teaches you to get along better in the future. I think it's not just about learning to have other people in the room, it's learning about the other people in the room.
You're absolutely right. Well, and I will go back to the economics of it all. We know that people who graduate with certificates or formal degrees do better economically, individually over time, and our communities need economic development and economic strength. So we're still limited to access.
And that's not to say that you can not have a really great life and not go to college. It's just that the polish that it brings, I think, for students who sometimes go off to college and they have an opportunity to interact with so many different types of people all around the world, it just brings this extra layer of sophistication, I believe, that college experience that can't really be replaced.
And bottom line, depriving someone of higher education, someone who has the potential for it, is really keeping them in the underclass.
In some cases.
Yeah. Because it's really hard to transcend without that basic education.
Well, it's important to our community. It's important to individuals as a whole. That is a part of Gregory Adam Haile's individual story. And so we had a chance to speak with him recently. So stay tuned. After these messages, we'll be talking to Gregory Adam Haile, former president of Broward College. We'll be right back.
At the Women of Color Empowerment Institute, our mission is to enhance and expand leadership by women of color. We do this in a variety of different ways, including but not limited to providing mentorship opportunities for young professionals where we assist in helping to create paths to leadership. We empower women to develop capacities for social change. We produce programs that promote heritage awareness, and we provide training opportunities for business and government. Our institute holds seminars focused on professional success techniques, and we host many other events such as our popular Advocates for Change and Leaders Connect. The Women of Color Empowerment Institute publishes a magazine called Women Lead. Our signature event is the Women of Color Empowerment Conference, a yearly conference where hundreds of leaders gather from all across the United States and beyond. To learn more about membership and how you can support our programs or be a sponsor of the Women Lead TV, visit us at nationalwomenofcolor.com. Again, that's nationalwomenofcolor.com.
The law office of Austin Pammies Norris Weeks Powell is a full-service law firm practicing in the area of governmental law, including the representation of municipalities, civil litigation, personal injury, real estate, and corporate transactional matters. With over 100 years of collective experience, our attorneys are admitted to practice before state courts, federal courts, and the United States Supreme Court. We are conveniently located in downtown Fort Lauderdale and can be reached at 954-768-9770. Or for more information about the law firm of Austin Pammies Norris Weeks Powell, visit our website at apnwlaw.com. That's apnwlaw.com.
Welcome to the program, Greg.
Welcome.
It is an honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
We are excited to have you. Now, we know that education is not just a profession for you, it is your mission. And so I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about your background and why education is so important to you.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for asking. It's one of these things that has been transformative in my life. And what's been so incredible is that the thing that has transformed my life the most has been something I've been able to leverage to make a difference in the lives of others. You mentioned earlier that I was born in Queens, New York, and I grew up in South Jamaica, Queens, which is frankly a very challenging environment then and remains one today. I grew up there in mostly the 80s and early 90s during the height of the crack epidemic. And I still remember as I walked out of my home, I would look across the street and the home across the street was boarded up and all kinds of drug activity and illegal activity that was going on there. My home, every single window had bars on it. I had a bullet come through my living room window, and frankly, every single day there's a story to be told about growing up in that environment. And my mother did something that I think was incredibly courageous. In the 3rd grade, she actually lied about my address so I could go to school in a better neighborhood. So I would go through the projects, I'd get on the bus for about 45 minutes, and then I'd get off and walk for another 10 minutes before I was in a neighborhood that was far kinder than mine. And from the 3rd grade through the 6th grade, I was in this amazing public school. And I'll never forget, it was in 1989, I was graduating from the 6th grade. And I said to a friend who was from this more affluent neighborhood, I said, "Isn't this amazing? We're going to be the last class of the decade." And he said, "No, we're going to be the last class of the millennium because we're going to graduate college in 1999. And that was the first time I'd ever heard the word college. But when I think about that today, not that I thought this way then, but today, a 6th grader who knew exactly what year he was going to graduate from college introduced the word to someone who had never heard it before in the same grade, same age. And that, in my view, speaks to the chasm that exists for so many of us in so many communities, so many individuals who are unexposed, not untalented, not under-equipped, but simply unexposed. And so it turned out that he was right. I actually did end up graduating college in 1999. And but even as eventually I went to middle school in that same neighborhood, it became clear, however, that I wasn't going to be able to perpetuate the story that allowed me to be in those neighborhoods. It was basically my mother lied about my address, of course. And I ended up going to high school in the neighborhood that I grew up in, and which was a marked difference. I remember it was known for having one of the highest HIV rates, one of the highest teen pregnancy rates. And it was one of the first 40 schools in New York City that was selected to have metal detectors as you go into the building. And so I saw all of this. I experienced the dichotomy between one neighborhood and another, one school to another. And here I was graduating high school in 1995 with a 2.7 GPA, and I was in the top 15% of my class.
Wow.
I go off to college, Arizona State University, sight unseen, because I didn't know you were supposed to visit colleges. So I ended up going to a school that was nearly 2,500 miles away, just so I could get away from my own neighborhood. It was there that I learned that I would need remedial education. It was there that I would first realize that you didn't have to have metal detectors to be safe. And so here I was in an environment that was new to me. I grew, I changed, I understood what it meant to study, I understood what it meant to care about academic rigor and not wondering about what it was going to be like to get home safely. And it changed my life. And then 19 years later, as I mentioned, I graduated college in 1999. 2018, July 1st, effectively, I had the privilege of becoming the president of Broward College, one of the most inclusive institutions in all of America. Over 150 countries of origin represented among the student body, 50 languages spoken. And there I was, in a position to transform lives, to make sure we were bridging gaps that I had lived and that many millions live as well, and to be in a seat to make that difference. So it was a very powerful journey and powerful experience for me to be able to get to.
And you started by shaking things up right away.
Yeah.
I hear that you did it gently.
Yeah.
But you started to ask questions and you were also asking your staff to ask questions.
Yeah.
What was that about?
Yeah, so it was interesting. So here we were this amazing institution that had received a number of accolades, incredibly affordable at about $82 a credit. And we were recognized as an open access institution, which essentially means if you have a high school diploma, you can enroll at Broward College. And what I started to challenge was how we defined the accessibility of the institution. Yes, if you had a high school diploma, you could get in. Yes, it was incredibly affordable. But the question really was, from a data perspective, were we really serving those who were the most challenged among us? Were we indeed actually attracting those who may be undisclosed or unexposed to college? And so we did an investigation of the data. And we had about 60,000 students at the time. And we started to look at how many of our students actually came from some of those zip codes that have the highest unemployment rates and lowest education attainment rates. And the numbers were incredibly low. So here we were calling ourselves accessible, but we were asking those with no transportation to find a way to get to us. We were asking those with no time, because essentially maybe they had multiple jobs and multiple children and just couldn't find the time to get to us to find a way. We were asking those with no technology to somehow find a way to get to us as well. Geographically, we were unexposed to the communities that needed us most. And so when we talk about that shakeup, if you will, what it really came down to, fundamentally, we were not satisfying the basis for our existence, making sure that we were serving all those who needed us most. And so what we decided to do was, instead of telling all those with the greatest challenges to come to us, we decided to go to them. And very simply, very practically, what it meant was, how do we make sure we identify those communities with the greatest challenges, and we define that as highest unemployment and lowest education attainment rates. We actually partnered with local entities. Think about your county libraries, think about nonprofit organizations like the Urban League, think about municipalities that have empty space. We stopped asking the students to come to us. We brought our faculty to those communities. We brought our technology to those communities. We decided that students no longer would have to come to us, but they could walk down the street to take classes. 5 years into the programming, we had about 5,000 students being served. And so when we think about the basis for our existence, and this is not relegated to Broward College, this is about colleges across the country, particularly community colleges, but any college that defines itself as a driver of economic mobility and opportunity must stop asking those with the greatest challenge to come to them and ask themselves how they become available to those who need them most.
Well, let's pick up on that economic opportunity
Sure.
part of it. I mean, you have branded some programs that are now bona fide national models. So tell us, specifically a little bit about the content of those programs and why it's so important economically for our community to have that access.
Yeah. So one of the things that I continue to start with is the larger data and the macroeconomic data from a national perspective. One of the things that we know to be clear is that if you were to look back 50 years ago, the top quartile of income earners had about 40% of their kids going to and graduating from college, and the bottom quartile had about 6% of their kids graduating from college. You fast forward to today, top quartile went from about 40% to nearly 70% of their kids going to and graduating from college. Bottom quartile went from 6 to just 13%. And so the numbers actually widened, right? The likelihood of you going to college, if you're from in the lower level of the income ladder, is less than 13%. That has, again, nothing to do with their capacity. It has nothing to do with their talent. It is about the exposure to opportunity. And most importantly, economic opportunity. We know the importance of economic opportunity. We know the importance of education as it relates to economic opportunity. All the data points in the world, including every economist, will tell you the higher education attainment you have, the greater your income outcomes over your lifetime. Similarly, your likelihood of you having a healthier life is increased. A longer life is increased. The likelihood of being incarcerated dramatically declines. The likelihood of you needing public assistance, it dramatically declines, all tied to the education attainment level of a given individual. And so when I talk about these programs, such as Broward Up, which I've described, is really around making that accessibility impossible to ignore. And by the way, clearly there are people who would suggest, well, they're not going to want the opportunity, or they're not going to be interested in the opportunity. What was great about what we were able to develop, and now what's being replicated nationally, is that the opportunity was available and it was seized. And now we're seeing lives changed and the model being perfected across the country. That's critically important. Then it comes a matter of, and then with the mindset consistently being, who are we missing? We knew we were missing folks from these communities. We also know that we're missing folks who might be incarcerated. And so one of the things that we've been able to do that's now been replicated, at least in a few places in Florida, perhaps in the future elsewhere, is trying to make sure that those who are incarcerated have education attainment opportunities. And so one of the things that we were really proud of the work that we did was at the Hollywood Relief Center. A lot of people don't know about it. There are about 100 women who are serving in their last 18 months of their sentence. And so what does it mean for us to be able to provide post-secondary attainment opportunities during that last 18 months so that when they finish, they complete their time, they have the opportunity then to move into a job that can transform their lives and also, of course, reduce recidivism rates. So being conscious as higher education institutions across the country about not just serving those who can get to you, but being conscious of serving those who may not even have the opportunity to think about you, and making sure that you are there to make sure the opportunities exist.
President Haile, you have been widely supported by the Broward County business community and really the South Florida business community. And so I'm wondering, what do you attribute that support to?
You know, one of the things that's really important to recognize first is the Broward County business community cares about this community at large. It cares about its institutions. It cares about not just the higher education system here, but also, of course, the K-12 and beyond. And so recognizing the value of having the business community care is really critical. What we were able to do that was probably a little bit different with Broward College is really communicate with the business community in a way that was slightly different in terms of driving home the data and the impacts that the college could have. You know, when I think about when I stepped into the role back in 2018, the unemployment rate was about 3.1, 3.2%, which is a very tight labor market at any time. It's actually tighter now. And so you recognize the needs of the business community in terms of not having the talent that they need to fully optimize their needs as respective businesses. And we started having that conversation about what does it mean not just to go the traditional route, getting a 2-year degree or 4-year degree, but how do we quickly make sure that we have students getting short-term programming, getting the skills that they need to help quickly meet the needs of the business community. And it was wonderful to see how the business community embraced it. In fact, the model that I described earlier, Broward Up, it was critical to see how the business community said, if that is where the talent is, regardless of the community, and it is underutilized, then that is where we need to go. And it was remarkable to see how the business community very quickly embraced the opportunity, seeing that there were communities that had materially higher unemployment rate, and knowing that that is where the talent was, and not underestimating the talent that was there, but partnering with us to make sure that that talent was fully optimized and inevitably working with the businesses that they were leading. So it was wonderful to see that, both from a data-driven perspective, but then taking the data and activating it and ensuring that they were actually working with those who needed us most.
That brings us to our audience.
Sure.
There must be people in our audience right now wondering, what are these programs? If I want to transfer my skills,
Sure.
move from one job to another, what are the jobs that are out there that are available that I could pick up a skill set rather quickly?
Yeah.
doing?
So it is a great question because the needs are vast right now. And so if you are an employee who is looking for an opportunity in this tight labor market, the opportunities are pervasive and employers are looking. So you think about, certainly in fields such as healthcare, there is a material shortage in so many different areas in that space. I think the hospitals are looking for about 500 or 600 employees each in terms of our major hospitals here in Broward County. And again, that transcends Broward County. You see opportunities in software development. You're seeing opportunities in technology. You're seeing a lot of opportunities in education as well. There's also a significant teacher shortage. There's a lot of different things that are available, and being able to get short-term certifications in some of those areas really help. And when you think about what we built at Broward College and a lot of other institutions are working on too, it's about a pathways model. You know, one of the biggest challenges that we see in higher education, this actually relates to the cost of higher education as well, is that there are students who go into a program and for some reason they realize, you know what, it's actually not what I wanted to do. You know, maybe it's someone who thought they wanted to be a nurse and then realized, you know what, I don't want to be a nurse. But now they spent time, they spent money, and you don't want them to lose all that they've built. And so the question becomes, how do you build a pathways model so that they can actually lateral into another area where they don't lose time, they don't lose money, and they can continue to grow? And so those are the kinds of opportunities that we help students seize upon and want to continue to be able to do that.
Well, I mean, that is so important because that's speaking to that issue of student debt and so many students carrying debt without having achieved the degree.
Yeah.
And so what do we need to do nationally? I know you started some things at Broward College, so what's the model?
Yeah. So one of the biggest challenges, and frankly, what keeps people from even starting, is the fear of accumulating debt. Right now, there's $1.7 trillion in student loan debt in this country. It impacts your ability to buy a home. It impacts your decision to have children. It impacts a lot of different aspects of anyone's life. And it also, of course, deters them from enrolling in post-secondary opportunity, as we've already talked about, the most important opportunity for economic success. And so what we have to be conscious of doing is sometimes thinking, one, you don't necessarily, I know this sometimes can be hard to hear, but everyone doesn't need to start out with a college degree in mind, right? Because they're often very expensive. So sometimes, again, short-term certifications are a great way to move into post-secondary education, attainment, and opportunity, and then inevitably move towards an associate's degree or move towards a baccalaureate degree. But getting people in early, getting people with quick wins, and making sure that those quick wins are cost-effective and are not going to be a debt burden to individuals. The other just very basic reality is that institutions of higher education have to be more conscious of keeping their costs low. Traditionally, most institutions will increase their cost of education every single year. A lot of times the student starts as a freshman and the price is significantly different by the time that they're graduating. The other part is making sure that students who graduate have great jobs on the back end of their graduation. One of the biggest challenges, again, in the worst case scenario, a student will spend a significant amount of money and they won't graduate and they have no credential. That is a very difficult and dangerous situation for a student to be in. Just as challenging sometimes is graduating with a credential that doesn't lead you to a job following graduation. So imagine a debt-burdened student who ends up with a job that they could have had they not even gone to college. And that can be very difficult to wrestle with too. So institutions of education have to be very conscious of making sure that the costs are low and that the opportunities for economic mobility are high by way of a great job following graduation.
What happens with students who believe that, for whatever reason, have been discouraged,
Yeah.
that they're not college material?
Yeah.
And just the word college is intimidating?
So I have a lot of concerns about that. One of the things that I often hear is college is not for everyone. And that may be true. But my concern about that is who gets to decide who it is for? And one of the biggest challenges is that we often are dictating who it is for. When I was in the high school I went to, I'll never forget when a teacher called out to me. I was in the back of the class, it's a crowded classroom, and she told me that if you ever go to college, you will never survive. And so here you had someone who was making the loud decision, essentially, that college was not for me. And I know that story is being told all over by different individuals every day around this country. And that is not right. It is the individual that gets to decide. And it is when we presuppose who should be benefiting from this incredible opportunity is when the challenges, in my view, are created. And so what we need to do as systems is make sure that the opportunity is available to everyone.
Ladies, that was amazing. I am just floored with the knowledge and experience and the transformative leadership President Haile implemented while he was at Broward College.
And I think one of the fundamental issues for him is that he came from humble beginnings. He understands what took him to a level of success that he has now reached. And as a result, he was able to relate, to the students and find paths for those less fortunate to come into the higher education system and to thrive there. That's amazing.
Well, what I love is that he took higher education to the community. He didn't wait for folks to have lack of transportation, lack of whatever else the needs were to try to get to the institution. He took the institution to the people. And that's more of what I believe these universities and colleges need to be doing to serve communities.
Well, and education, higher education is incredibly complex. And I love the fact that he always leads with the data. The data show that it's better for our communities writ large to bring higher education into communities of need. It's better for all of us.
And I am hopeful that this type of leadership will continue on, not just at Broward College, but also throughout the United States as the leadership that's needed in order to really embrace all communities. And that's our time today. So until the next time,
Be empowered.